Tonight on Wild Talk, from the heart of the Everglades, I'm joined by the Python Huntress herself, Amy Siwi, as she goes face to face with one of the most invasive predators in North America.
When I learned that there were pythons in Florida, I was like, wait a minute. Instead of catching like a 6-foot black rat snake in Indiana, I can catch a 20-foot python in Florida. Sign me up.
Then we break down serious gear with Todd Snader from the Pure Archery Group as we put the Excalibur Hybrid X crossbow under the spotlight. This is going to be great. Welcome to Wild Talk, the untamed voice of Canada's outdoors, where raw stories, real people, and wild places collide.
This episode of Wild Talk is one for the books.
Let's talk wild. Wild Talk, powered by Better Call Paul, is brought to you by Better Hunting, Better Stories, Better Call Paul. Umarex, Hunt with Air. Bronc Beer, Great Buckin' Beer. Welcome back to an exciting episode of Wild Talk. We're rolling in through season 5, hot and heavy. Already had some great guests on. This episode promises to be an absolute banger. This is somebody I've followed on Instagram for a while, and we happen to make it connect. I am joined by the Python Huntress herself, Amy Siwi. Did I pronounce that last name right?
You did.
She's all the way down in balmy Florida. Huge thanks for joining me today, Amy.
Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
This is going to be great. As I told you on our chat on the phone, I've been to Florida. Both times were in February, and it was 25, 28 Celsius during the day, and that was nice, perfect temperature for me. So like I said, I could move there tomorrow and join you in the beautiful state. It's a fantastic place. If you haven't been and you're watching this or listening, go. Highly recommended. And I'm not even a tour agent, so I'm not making any money saying this. It's just genuine love for the state. So let's roll right into this. As I said, the Python Huntress herself, this kind of gives an episode, kind of a preview as to what we're getting into. So what first pulled you into being the Python Huntress? What made you say, this is what I want to do?
Well, it is kind of a long story, so I will condense it a little bit. But ever since I was little, my dad put me in a creek and taught me how to catch all kinds of critters. And I just had this fascination with snakes. You know, why wasn't it like dolphins or puppies or something? You know, it was snakes. But anyway, so it's always been kind of a hobby of mine. And so it's always been a part of me. But when I learned that there were pythons in Florida, I was like, wait a minute. Instead of catching like a 6-foot black rat snake in Indiana, I can catch a 20-foot python in Florida. Sign me up. So I came down on vacation, caught a 9-footer, and I was like, yep, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I packed my stuff, sold my business, and moved to Florida to figure out how to become a python hunter.
How long you been in Florida doing this?
6 years now.
6 years, that's it. You've already made quite the name for yourself. And some of the stuff I've seen on Facebook and Instagram from following you, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So how did you decide this is what you want to do? I know you said you liked snakes, but that's not really a career path most people would kind of associate with a love of snakes.
Well, for sure. And I didn't even know it was a thing, until it was. I was a real estate broker in Indianapolis for 13 years before I moved to Florida. And I had no plans to change career. I loved real estate. I had a team. It was a pretty big business. All of my, goals were centered around growing my team, growing my business. And so when I came down here, I wasn't really thinking that I was going to move to become a python hunter. I just wanted to catch python. And when I was here, we were here for 3 weeks. And so I learned a lot about the problem, because first of all, I think we should get it out of the way that pythons are an invasive species in Florida, right? So they're not supposed to be here. They are killing our ecosystem. They have eaten 98% of the mammals in parts of the Everglades. So they're a real problem. So we have to get rid of them, right? And I'll touch on that because people say, if you like snakes, why do you want to kill them? Anyways, which I don't, but we'll get to that later. So anyways, it was one of those things that when I learned about the problem, and it was just amazing out there in that swamp and in the woods. And I thought, I can actually use this passion that I have to make a difference. And I was just like, yeah, this is it. It felt like in my heart, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
So that was the moment that you just kind of said, you know what, this is my life now.
I was like, this is going to be my life. I don't know what it looks like because I don't know anybody down here. I don't have a job. I wanted to get hired by the state because the state has, the Python program that they've hired 100, they call them contractors. So Python Hunters. And at the time it was just a pilot program. And so nobody could even tell me if they were going to continue it. And if they did continue it, if they were going to hire. So I really moved down here. I'm like, I'll figure it out.
You kind of said that the state had hired 100 of these Python hunters. That's kind of mind-blowing to me that I know that there's an invasive species problem in Florida. I've been there, as I said, and just about everywhere you look, there's an invasive species. If you look on a tree, sometimes you're seeing one of is it the panther chameleon that's invasive down there? Or is it the veiled? One of them's invasive. You've got iguanas are everywhere. There's
toads, lionfish. We have actually over 500 species of invasive, whether it's plants, insects, reptiles, fish. I mean, we've got it all.
500.
People always say, hey, what's it like in South Florida? And I say, a pet store.
It is.
To a pet store. We legit have everything in Florida that is at a pet store because we were the hub for the exotic pet industry.
Right. Yeah. I can see that myself. We're sitting doing the touristy thing, turn around and there's a gecko or some sort of lizard on the tree, and then there's a different type of thing on the rock, and you sit there. Everywhere in Florida is covered in water. Everywhere is water. There's signs that say don't go close to the water. There's alligators. But one thing you'll notice is you'll see all these fish in the shallows. You'll see like the plecos around, which are invasive. You'll see the peacock bass, which are invasive. It's tough to find anything down there that's not really invasive, that hasn't taken a hold.
It's really funny you say that, because when I first moved down here, I had to actually learn what was native and what wasn't with some of this. Because I remember I was at a freshwater pond, I think, and I'm looking down and I was like, is that an Oscar that I'm looking at right now?
Yep.
I'm like, those aren't from Florida. I used to sell those at the pet store, growing up. And then next to it's a cichlid. And then I see the plecos and I'm like, wait, these were in my fish tank to suck off all the algae. What is happening?
That's exactly it, right? It's
so many things down here.
Yeah, Florida's got that climate, that habitat where these things that essentially lived in pet stores and get brought into people's houses, they'll grow, they'll thrive naturally, right? People, you always see it where people will say, or pet stores will say, do not release your pets into the wild. And unfortunately, that's what's happened in a lot of cases down there. But with the python, I've heard rumors. I don't know how much truth there is to it. So maybe you can enlighten myself and everybody watching and listening to how the python became established down there. The rumor I heard, like I said, I don't know how much truth there is to it, is that there was a hurricane a bunch of years ago and it wiped out like a rescue facility or a rehab facility for these snakes, and they just kind of went nuts.
Yes. So that's pretty close.
Okay.
It's kind of a controversy. Some people say it's 100% people only releasing their pets, which that absolutely did happen. These pythons, they start off as 2 feet. They come out of the egg at 2 feet. And so they're really cute in the pet store, right? And then they get to be 20 feet. So by the time they get to be 12 feet, sometimes less, they're too hard to handle, house, and feed. So people say, hey, I don't want to kill my snake, so I'm going to let it go and live a long, happy, healthy life in the Everglades, right? People 100% did that. But they did that with a lot of other different types of snakes that we don't have. They don't have a hold here, right? Right. So the main reason that we're in this situation is because Hurricane Andrew in 1992 came through and it blew away a breeding facility. Now, they were breeding the pythons for the pet industry. So it was legal there was nothing illegal about what was going on. They were selling, breeding them to sell them to people who wanted to buy them as pets. And it sent 900 pythons to the same general vicinity of the Everglades. And that is the epicenter of our problem.
So that's all it took, was just 900 going essentially wild and feral, right? And realistically, out of that 900, would you say maybe half of them survived immediately? So, right, just not being able to find food, not being able to adapt. So 450 is all it took to take hold. And how far? I know they're in the Everglades, but how far north in Florida do they go?
Oh, they're like South Fort Myers over to West Palm Beach and down. So that but now we've been finding them up by, it's Northport. So I would say it's a little bit further north of Fort Myers.
Okay.
So, and we're finding them on a regular basis. Now, do we have confirmation that that's part of all of, the invasive part? Not yet. They might have been pets that were released, but
right.
The pets have been outlawed. You haven't been able to have a constrictor as a pet here for quite a few years. So, who knows if it is or not. But the bottom line is, from those 900 pythons, we now have an estimated 500,000 of them out there.
That was my next question. How many do they figure is there? 500,000. That's
insane. Yes.
I mean, insane's not even the word for it.
Right.
I live in a city of about 90,000 people. So when you kind of say just how many snakes there are,
well, it's okay. So their territory is like 3.5 million acres.
Okay.
Right. So it goes from Fort Myers. Okay. So I should say it's like all of South Florida.
Okay.
Is their territory, because this is the only part of the United States that has a subtropical climate, which is very similar to their climate in Southeast Asia, which is where they're originally from. Right. So that's why they can survive and thrive so well here, is because it's very similar to their habitat there. And the difference between here and there is that they have no predators here.
Right.
At all. Right. So in Asia, they have the king cobra, and the king cobra eats other snakes. And so they eat a lot of the pythons, because the reticulated pythons also are in the Burmese python territory in Asia. And the reticulated pythons get to be 30 feet long, right? So you've got all of these giant snakes, but the population control are the cobras. And here we don't have that. And no, we are not releasing cobras. Just to clear that up.
Yeah, that'd be the nightmare of that, because king cobras can get 16, 18 feet long themselves.
Yeah, and they're venomous.
You run around with any of them.
Yeah, no, we're good.
So what kind of impact are these things having on the landscape?
It's interesting. The biggest thing that we're seeing right now is our mammals are disappearing. I mean, in parts of the Everglades, 98% of the animals are gone because of the pythons. They have voracious appetites, and they eat everything from, like rats to squirrels, rabbits, raccoons, possums, bobcats, deer, alligators, wading birds, everything. It's truly, it is so sad when I've only lived here for 6 years, and around my house, I live in very South Naples. I haven't seen a rabbit in 3 years. Actually, I went to Yellowstone and I saw a rabbit, and I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, it's a rabbit. And these people are like, oh my God, like there's like a bison walking down the street, and you're like excited about a rabbit. I'm like, you don't understand. So anyways, it's, as far as changing the landscape, the animals going extinct is what we're mainly concerned about right now. How this is going to change what the Everglades looks like, we're not entirely sure yet, because it will change it. Just like the whole Yellowstone, story when they introduced the wolves and it changed everything, that's going to happen. I just don't know what it exactly looks like.
That's unreal to think that we're 30. I I want to say it's only 10 years ago that these were released because I refuse to believe 92 is coming up 35 years ago. It just makes us sound so much older.
I
But
know.
it's crazy to think that such a small subpopulation can explode that much and do so much ecological damage. That's
Here's part of the problem. They lay between 20 and 40 eggs a
okay.
year. The big ones can lay over 100, right? So they reproduce it is only once a year, but the survival rate of the eggs is very high. And where was I going with that? I was going somewhere else. But oh yeah, they are so difficult to find. I mean, it is. When I moved down here, just based on what people were saying, like, oh, pythons are taking over the Everglades, I thought I was going to come down here, walk through that swamp and fling them out left and right, like loading them up in the truck. It took me 6 weeks to find my first python. Oh yeah. I mean, I did come at the wrong time, as far as we didn't know how to hunt back then. We didn't really know as much as we know now. So we were doing it kind of wrong. But they are very, very difficult. And that's part of why they're so successful. I mean, they were beyond our control before we even knew they were a problem.
All right, we are back once again. I am joined by Todd from the Pure Archery Group. We just had him on with a segment talking about the Bowtech Ascend. He's joining me once again. This is something I kind of teased towards at the end of that last segment. This time we're talking about the new Hybrid X from Excalibur. Todd, let's dig into this one first. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here again and talk about Excalibur. It's awesome.
Oh, we chatted before we got rolling here. I've got one of the old school Excaliburs.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're talking 15, 20 years old. So I'm excited to hear how the technology has changed and how it can be into the hands of somebody that's going to make use of it in the field. So let's start with the big picture.
Sure.
What exactly is the Hybrid X and why is it such a game changer for Excalibur?
So it's a big change for those that have seen it already, or when they go look at it, you're going to see a big change from what they've traditionally seen from us at Excalibur. So we've been known for over 40 years for our recurve design, simplistic, ultra durable, less moving parts like that. But we wanted to take that and move that over into a compound platform. There's a lot of good companies out there that make compound crossbows.
Mm-hmm.
And one major thing a lot of crossbow hunters are looking for something that's a little more maneuverable, a little narrower platform. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of crossbow hunters that were willing to sacrifice durability to be able to go get that. So we said, we've got to step it up, take Excalibur durability, the confidence that our loyal users have had with us forever, and put that into a compound crossbow. And that's where the Hybrid X comes in, thus the name. So it takes our recurve, it's a reverse draw recurve limb, but also utilizes a fixed cam system on the rail. So we're able to make it narrower, a little bit more maneuverable, and a little lighter as well. Produces some great speeds at 435 feet per second. So you have and that's with a 400 grain arrow, not a traditional 350 rated. So that's like 168 pounds of knockdown power. So that's some legit power in a nice compact platform.
No kidding. Because I know the old school one I've got, it's probably about 3 feet wide, about 2 feet long, and it's got to weigh 15 pounds. But man, it did the job. It knocked down a couple of bears for me over the years. And I can only imagine just how that technology has changed. It's reverse compound. And
it is. Yep. It's a reverse draw, which is, it's not necessarily new in a compound crossbow, but utilizing the recurve limb. And what's huge with our recurve system, one thing that people love with our traditional recurve is the ability to service yourself, change your strings. In the field, you can do it right in your tree stand if you needed to change your string if you accidentally cut it. You can do the same thing with the Hybrid X, which is pretty unseen in the compound world. So you can do the exact same thing. You don't need a bow press for the cross, like for a compound crossbow. You can do it yourself with a string changing harness, just like you could on your ibex. You just use the harness, switch out the strings, switch out the cables, and you're up and running again. So that was critical for us to still have that DIY serviceability.
You said it. That's a game changer. I would have had no idea that was doable out in the field without a bow press.
100%. Who has time to wait for a fixed crossbow if you cut the string with a broadhead or anything like that? I mean, but shops are busy during bow season, and it's not uncommon to drop something off, especially a crossbow, and wait for 4 weeks, 5-6 weeks to get it back. With this, if you cut your string, you can fix it right there in hunt camp and not miss a beat. Go back out hunting that afternoon or the next morning. So
what does this thing weigh?
So you're just a bare bow. You're looking at let me grab my spec here. So bare crossbow, it's 8.3 pounds. So that's without any of the accessories on it. 10.3 fully accessorized with your scope, your quiver, your arrows, everything on it, like you'd be hunting in the field.
That's a standard old school rifle right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's very, very doable. So who was this designed for? Was this like for the first time user, the seasoned user, mix of both?
Mix of both. I've seen, since we've launched this, I've seen youth, I've seen experienced, I've seen a lot of vertical bow hunters crossing over into crossbows now because they're able to get something like this from Excalibur. A lot of our TV ambassadors love to have Excalibur crossbows for their kids that are just kind of getting an archery and they can't shoot a vertical bow. So a lot of our TV personalities jumped right on this. They wanted something that's nice, maneuverable in a blind, in a tree stand for youth. And it's nice and easy to cock. It has the integrated crank, so you only have like 14 pounds of effort with the crank. So it's an average kid can do it.
That's amazing. No more just standing on it and trying to reef up with the ropes like my old school. I think it's time to trade it in.
I've done demonstrations when we first launched it with the media guys like yourself, just cranking it, sitting up on a workbench without any effort at all.
Unreal. So I think it's time to trade mine in. So where do I go to get my hands to look at the new one?
So that one, we have finally, we're coming out of a back order. It's been so popular. We were on a serious back order. Finally, we're starting to catch up with the back order. Shops have it in stock. So you can get it at any of your local dealers. You can also get it at ExcaliburCrossbow.com if you're looking to buy direct. But I would recommend get your local dealer because you can shoot it there and try it out. You will be pleasantly surprised. It is one great machine.
Awesome, Todd. A huge thanks once again for joining me today. I got to go check this out.
Thanks, Steve.
Talk a little bit about how you learned to do this. You said it took you a while to find them. What kind of, I don't want to say learning curve because it doesn't really sound like there is one. For me, as somebody who I have a snake myself, I just go, oh, there you are, and I go and I pick them up.
What kind of snake do you have?
I got a corn snake.
Oh they're my favorite. I used to breed them, and they actually are here. They are native to Florida.
They are,
and it's so fun to find them here.
Oh yeah, they're gorgeous snake. They're a lot of personality. He's about 4 feet long, and he's hilarious. But he's orange. He's easy to spot, right? So he's pretty easy to spot in the tall grass and when he's hiding in his tank. Because I got a full bioactive. I've done a proper habitat for him. So where I was going with that was you said that it took you a while to find these snakes and kind of learn how to catch them. So walk me through that process. Walk us through that process of how one learns to become a python hunter.
You go out and you find one, and then you try to catch it, and you go from there.
So it's really that easy. Anybody can do it.
I say it's that. Yeah. Okay. So it does take a minute. So me being from the Midwest, I know how to spot all of our Midwest snakes, but this is a totally different snake in a totally different environment. So you have to get used to it. Sometimes, there could be an 18-foot python and I can only see this much pattern through the grass. Right. And so, anybody else would probably not know it's there. I do. And that took a while to really hone that in. As far as catching them, we make it look easy. Apparently
you do.
And, we go up and grab them, and it is what it is. It doesn't show all of this we went through trying to get
No.
this figured out. I mean, it's these snakes, they aren't used to seeing people, right? And they don't look at us as prey or predator. We're more of an annoyance. So most of the time, you really can walk right up to them and grab them.
Okay.
After you grab them, it's game on, right?
That-
But they will get spooked. If you hesitate, if you grab it by the tail, it's going to turn around and bite you. You want to grab it behind the head, So all of these things and even like a 12-foot python, it's a good python. That's a pretty big python.
That's a huge python to somebody who's got a 4-foot corn snake. That's huge.
Right. And when we know how to handle it, we know to keep the first third of its body from wrapping us if we can. We know that sometimes we have to let it go and re-grab it. But if people have never done this before and they come up on a 12-foot python, it's very intimidating.
Mhm.
It's very intimidating. And they've got a mouthful of razor sharp teeth. And so, actually, can I tell you this quick story about this guy?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. So everybody thinks that they can do this, right? So we see members of the public all the time on these roads that we cruise down looking for these pythons. So this kid, we pull up and he has an 8-footer by the tail, and he's kind of, like trying to avoid the bite.
Right.
He has one shoe off and one shoe in his other hand. I was like, I'm not sure what's happening here. So we pull over and I said, hey, do you need some help? And he was like, yes. Okay. So I go and I grab the python, and he said, well, this is my first python. And I said, great. How are you going to kill it? Because you are not allowed to transport a live python in Florida. You have to kill it on the spot and humanely.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, how are you going to kill it? He said, I don't know. I said, well, I've got a bolt gun. I'll kill it for you. So I killed it. And I said, well, do you want the carcass? He said, no, I don't think I want the carcass. Why are you here?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Because here's the problem with that. If we wouldn't have shown up, he wouldn't have had any idea what to do. And he would have had to let it go because he wasn't putting it in his car. He wasn't going to kill it because he didn't know how. So he would have had to let it go. So if he wasn't there, we would have rolled by. We would have seen the python. We would have been able to get it properly, handled it, humanely euthanized it, put it in the cooler, and been on our merry way. And it wouldn't have been an issue, right? So that's the problem with people not knowing what to do and thinking that they can go out there and, hey, yeah. And that was only an 8-foot snake. That's an easy peasy snake.
Only an 8-foot snake.
I mean, for us,
Well, yeah, no kidding. I know you're talking about their teeth, and you got something hiding off camera that I saw you bring before we started recording. Does that thing show the teeth very well?
Yeah, it actually does. So pythons they are not venomous.
No.
They're constrictors, but they do have a mouthful of razor sharp teeth. And
oh my God.
That is a 14-footer.
14-foot.
Yep. So you can see in how they're curved back.
Back.
So when they bite their prey, and then they wrap around it. So if their prey tries to, come out, they just wedge themselves deeper into the teeth of this python. So it's not fun. And these things are so sharp still. Like this thing has eaten so many animals and they're so sharp. It's unbelievable.
No kidding. 14-footer. Is that a big one? Is that a good one?
It's a good size. The average python that we catch, and I say we, I mean collectively as all of the python hunters, is 6 to 9 feet.
Okay.
Because I think that's when they're growing a lot, they're moving the most. And I think that's why we catch the majority of that size.
That would make sense. They're kind of transient. They're learning themselves, learning how to hunt. They don't really know how to camouflage themselves yet.
Right. And they are, when they get bigger, they're eating bigger prey items. So they're taking longer to digest than when they're eating the smaller prey items. So.
Makes sense. So do you find them in similar sort of habitats, the big ones and the small ones, or are they just kind of a mix?
Pythons are everywhere and nowhere. I think that's the easiest way to describe it, because truly I mean, they spend 85% of their time not moving.
Right.
So when we're hunting, it's it's a matter of right time, right place. You have to know what you're looking for, but you got to be there when those pythons are out, and
Right.
we don't catch every night or every day.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. Yeah. Similar sort of thing to deer hunting, right? Where you tell somebody who's a new deer hunter that you're not looking for the entire animal, you're looking for pieces of the animal. Look for the ear, look for the eye, look for that little bit of twitch. Same sort of thing.
it is. So the people that I take out, because I do guided hunts now, I don't work for the state anymore. I was hired by the state, when I first moved here, and then now I run a guiding business. But it's so in the summer when we hunt, I have a truck and I have a snake deck. So we're standing up on the snake deck and I've got it all fitted with lights, right? So we're going down the main roads, which I know it sounds crazy, but the main roads, because they run parallel to the canals.
Mm-hmm.
So the pythons are going from the woods and the swamps into the canals and back. So we have a much better chance of finding them if you're on a road by a canal. Anyways, so like I said, I can spot a python even if I only see this much of it. I'm not expecting my clients to do that, right? But there are a lot of times that they're coming all the way out. Sometimes they're in the middle of the road. Doesn't happen a lot, but we call that a road gift. So if I always take the harder side, just so if there is one, I know what I'm looking for, and I'll give them like the guardrail side. So it's really easy to see a python coming out. But I would never expect them to see, some of the things that I see. But then, and actually the biggest question that I always get after I've caught a python and I've got people, they're like, how the hell did you see that? Every time. Most asked question of me, I think.
That's hilarious. I noticed like as well. I just came back from South Africa in July. It was the same sort of thing. My PH goes right there. And I'm like, how the hell did you see that?
Yeah,
but
right.
You do the job, you kind of get the eye for it, right? So
yeah.
A question I've got, and I know a lot of our listeners and viewers would have, is okay, so you've captured a python, you need to put it down. You put it down with a bolt gun, as you said, to the back of the skull, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Humane. What happens from there? Do you have to? I know here, if you take an animal that belongs to it'd be the state for you guys, but up here it's the crown, right? So if you take an animal that is an invasive species or you don't have a tag for it, you need to turn it over to the crown. What kind of thing happens down there with this? Is it similar sort of things that become property of the state, or how does that work?
Not at all. It's yours.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's invasive. You don't need a license. There isn't a bag limit. You can do it all year round. Anyone can do it. The only rule is that you have to kill the python on the spot. So you cannot put it in your truck and transport it anywhere alive. And you have to do that in a humane way.
Right.
So that's basically what it is. And then after that, and people also ask me, do you get paid for them? And the only people that can get paid for them are the people that are contracted by the state. So those 100 hunters are the only people that can get paid for them. So if you're a member of the public, you go out, you catch a python, there's nowhere that you can turn it in that you're going to get paid for it.
There's no bounty system. That's just a thank you very much. You've done your good citizen job. In BC, our invasive species, similar sort of thing. We call them Schedule C, right? Anytime, any place, no license required, and it's yours. So, are they edible? I know I've tried rattlesnake, but I've never tried python.
I mean, technically, they're edible.
It's one of those you can if you're really, really hungry.
And we actually took a python to a chef, and he made 4 wonderful dishes.
Okay.
It is so chewy. It is ridiculous. And so, no, and if you try to like pressure cook it or, whatever, it turns to slime. So you really can't. And it's full of mercury. Now, I would have said if you would have asked me about mercury 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, well, they say that they're full of mercury. I think
Right.
it's a way for the government to get out of having to, create a demand for the meat. But one of the biologists that I work with, I got a couple of pythons from a different area that what he's used to working on. And when he did the mercury test, one of them was only a 6-footer, and mercury levels off the charts.
Wow. Even at that size.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a huge eye opener for me. So yeah, mercury is a thing. So I definitely don't recommend eating them.
Yeah, no kidding. What are they eating that's causing that? Any idea? Or
Well,
is
I
it
think
just one of
it's
those things?
because we get all the runoff from Lake Okeechobee and all of those chemicals and everything that are just like flowing through the Everglades. We're working on the Everglades restoration and all of that to try to eliminate that, but that's got to be, what it is.
Yeah, Okeechobee, like sidetrack, has a huge pleco problem I've seen from watching some people on YouTube. Big, huge. I think it's the largest completely landlocked lake that's completely in the United States.
Yep.
Yeah, like people will say, well, the Great Lakes are bigger, but well, they're not completely in the States, right? And they're not landlocked.
Right.
Okeechobee's huge.
Yeah, it is. It is gross.
It's gross.
You're not supposed to eat anything out of it. You're
Really?
not. Oh yeah. It's what causes all the red tide and the,
Oh wow. I
oh,
had no idea.
yeah, they're working on cleaning it up and everything, but it's very political. It's a huge issue. So
That's a whole other story, hey?
a whole nother podcast.
So what's the largest one you've ever caught?
17.3.
17.3.
Yep, caught her by myself.
How did that one go down? Like, how does somebody in a team of 10, let alone by themselves, wrangle pure muscle at 17?
It was so earlier in the year I had to let like a 16-footer go because it was my first year and I had only caught like a 12-footer up to that point. I was by myself and there's this huge snake, and usually I will grab it behind the head with one hand and then grab, the end of the body. Then, we put it in the snake bag because when you work for the state, you don't have to kill them on the spot. So we would, bag them up and take them where we're supposed to take them. And then, and this thing was so big, one hand only covered half of her neck. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. It's not even going to fit in my bag that I have. Like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? And I had to let it go. And I hated that. And I went back and I said, okay, I'm going to be hunting alone again. I'm going to catch a big one. How do I prevent this? Well, when I worked in the vet and the pet store industry, in order to calm an animal down, we would put, something dark over there, like a dark cloth over their face. So I thought, well, maybe that could work with a python. So I had this 6x6 drawstring bag hanging on my door for whatever reason. And I thought, I wonder if I put that over its head. So I practiced with some 12 and 13 footers just to put it on their head just to see if they would bite me. And it just shut them down. So I was like, awesome. So I'm driving by myself. I see this python periscoping. I did not realize how big it was at the time. So I pull over, I go back. And if this tells you how difficult they are to see. So she's coming up to the highway, right? I saw her periscoping. So she's about 3 feet above the vegetation. She goes down. She's 17 feet. I know where she is, and I still couldn't find her right away. I finally found like this little tiny part of her pattern through the grass. And I'm like, oh, there you are. I mean, it's unbelievable how camouflage these things are. So I followed her like 2 feet up to her head, and it was like the biggest head that I've ever seen in my whole life. And I was like, and I'm standing there with my little drawstring bag, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Game on.
But I jumped on her because you can't hesitate. So I'm like, well, here we go. So I jumped on her, and she was so buried. So I had no idea how big she was because I couldn't see her. And so I'm straddling her kind of like my arms are locked out. I'm using all of my lower body strength to like squat her up because she just wanted to pull back into the swamp. So it was not like this wrestling match, but it was a battle of strength. And so at the same time, I'm trying not to let her open her mouth because then she'll get leverage on me.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get this bag, this over her head, and so it felt like it went on for an hour. It was only like 10 minutes, I think. But I finally got the head bag on, and she just stopped. Like, it was a miracle
Like the
because
light
I was
switch.
about done. My muscles were at the breaking point. So thankfully I got that on before that happened. And then, so I'm sitting in the swamp at midnight, like it's on the side of the road, but it's like kind of in a ditch. So you can't even really see me. And I'm sitting on the snake and I'm like, okay, catching my breath because now she was 110 pounds. So I have to pull her out and get her in the back of my truck. Right. So I'm taking a little break for a second. And so then I see some other hunters drive by. So I yelled out to them. And so they back up and I was like, hey, they're like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm sitting on a python. They're like, why? It's like, you'll see. So
Yeah.
they came down and they were just like, holy. So I'm really glad that they were able to help me get her out of there and up into the truck. So
What do you see as the future of Python management? Like, what's the real solution to this?
nobody knows. That's the thing. Nobody knows. There is a ton of research going on right now. I will say a ton of research to try to get it figured out because right now hunting, the way that we do it is the most effective thing. And it takes a hunter an average of 12 hours to get one python. Now our average is a little better, but collectively, right? And, so since 2017, since these programs have started, I think like 27,000 have been caught. So that's in what, like 8 years or something. And there's 500,000 of them out there reproducing every year. So it's just like, I often say, are we just prolonging the extinction of some of our animals? And we might be, but if we can do that long enough for this research to come up with a better solution, then, obviously it's worth it. It's worth it anyways to get as many as we can out. But so it's going to be something, genetic probably is what's going to have to happen somehow. But there, we have so many things going against us because if they would do like pythons, the males becoming sterile, well, I'm not entirely sure how that even works and how you would do that. But the problem is you have during breeding season, one female and like 5 or 6 males in a breeding aggregation. And they'll do that a couple times at least during the breeding season. So if you've got a couple sterile males, who cares?
It doesn't matter, right? The law of averages is there.
She's doing so many of them that something's going to get through.
Exactly. The law of averages, right? We saw that here a couple of years ago with some of the caribou populations in southeastern BC, right? They were damn near extinct. And people are like, well, why do you keep shooting the wolves? They're just going to go extinct anyway. And it was the exact same sort of thought process. If we can kind of slow this extinction down, we might be able to help bring back habitat, penning projects and stuff and helping them breed. So I get it. We're on opposite sides of the continent and we got the same sort of thought process when it comes to wildlife management. So I want to wrap this up. I know you're busy. If there was one thing you want our listeners and our viewers to take away from this, what would it be?
I would say that the pythons really are a huge issue. I would say that if anybody wants to help with it, to not just come down to Florida and drive around trying to help out. Hire me, hire somebody we'll take you out and show you how to do it, right? I think that every single one that we take out is making a difference because it takes a python 3 years to get to be 10 feet and it takes 200 animals to get it there. And these things live for 25 years. So we're doing everything that we can to protect our ecosystem. And we're just going to have to see how this all plays out.
Yeah. That bio load that they're putting on the ecosystem is, I can't even wrap my head around that. I've said that a few times this episode. Seems to be kind of the theme here, that get into a conversation that you think you know a little bit about, and then all of a sudden it's put right on your head, right? It's just the bio load from one snake alone versus 500,000. And that population is growing every single year.
Exponentially.
So, yeah, a huge thanks for joining me today, Amy. I love following your adventures on social media, and I hope there's an 18-footer in your future for you soon.
Thank you. I do too.
Thanks, Amy. Wild Talk, powered by Better Call Paul, is brought to you by Better Hunting, Better Stories, Better Call Paul. Boomerex, Hunt with Air. Bronc Beer, Great Buckin' Beer.